Is it a unicorn or a horse with an arrow in its head? Instead, picture a peacock with bones made of glass in the fog-filled woods one early morning. In front of him is an abyss. Behind him, another abyss. He furls the thick fan of his tail. Picture the quiet place where his blue soul will escape, its white blue feet, the fog, the sound of its footsteps.
Peacock, abyss, soul. 3 a.m. in the city was a soul I'd never seen. The streets are miles and empty. A unicorn jaywalks across Clark. The peacock stands at the corner, waiting for the light to change anyway. When you kicked me out, I could do nothing but wonder, shove my hands in my pockets till they warmed, ask the peacock how he was doing, and watch the reflection of neon signs pool in puddles near my feet.
Dear Casey, I wanted to have finished something of value by the time this letter was written, by which I mean we've been at this for 4 years, and if I had a coherent thought in relation to my own philosophy for every essay we've read, I'd have typed a 30-page paper on it by now. A failure of sorts, I guess. It would seem that the more I read, whether it's Coleridge with all his practicality and distance, or William Carlos Williams, by far and away my favorite, all I end up doing is making a concession in my mind to whatever philosophy has been stated. There are a few pieces of critical theory that I can honestly say I disagree with. I heard once that it's better to believe in nonsense than in everything. For whatever reason, though, I usually lack the initiative. I even feel dumb in saying that something is my favorite. I fall in love with almost everything we read, except for Shakespeare, maybe, and the Canterbury Tales, and the Shaka-Maxon guy. As for the others, there's almost no point in setting one apart. But there is something about the near absurdity of William Carlos Williams that I feel drawn to inextricably. Maybe this is because I crave absurdity, especially absurdity that I can't recreate. Like if I were to draw all over my face in Sharpie and stare right into the face of every passenger on the train ride home. The ability of yours to confront things in your work is something I've always admired. This is not to say those are your most successful poems. In fact, most of them probably never got a second draft, because sometimes poetry 3 is just that way. You can't revise everything, but you can make leaps, and it's especially the weird leaps that I'm envious of. What I mean to say is that there's always content that each of us gravitates towards. Everyone has their own hashtag daddy issues to reduce it way down. I feel so mired in the way I write. Like everything I write is another brick in a wall that I'm building around myself. I did not want to make a Pink Floyd reference, but I couldn't think of a better way to say it. I don't like Pink Floyd, really, so this metaphor is really dumb. Which is why the theme for this year's fall show really freaks me out. We never really learned how to fail in poetry 1 through 3. Like hardcore, brick-to-the-face failure. I mean, obviously we had failures, and we learned a lot from those, but dumb as it sounds, I don't think we could afford to fail too much, and so in large part we didn't. I don't know how to end this, so I guess I'll just say I'm super excited to read your letter. Sincerely, Katie.
Dear Katie, after ruminating on spring and awe and tradition and the individual talent these past few weeks, my ideologies are shifting. I can't tell you how tired I am of writing the pretty little God lyric, and although there's a place for it and it can be incredibly lovely, I know that's not what I want right now. I have come to disagree with Eliot and most of that particular essay at the moment. For some, like Eliot, it is imperative to separate the poet self and the man self. For others, it is more necessary to render those selves inextricable from one another and let the man self color the poem and be absolutely transparent within it. Right now, at least, I am the latter. I know, just in the realm of the world, my man self will always be the lens for my poet self. It is impossible to separate the two. And right now I'm wondering, why would we want to? I have focused my attention so much on craft and style itself that I've neglected the other essential part of poetry, content. The other day I was reading over my newest Eden poem and it was just like, this does not matter in the scheme of the world. This has already been written, I have already written it, this in no way initiates change and is in no way revolutionary for me. I was so dissatisfied with it. And my assignment from Marin was to write something that made no sense at all. Being the type A personality that I am, that night I wrote and wrote and wrote, but everything was too John Donne logical. But the next morning I was sitting in the lab alone, drinking coffee and listening to Benny and the Jets. And who knows what he's saying? I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. Then I said, okay, maybe that's what I need to do. I opened a Word document and wrote, I'm trying to write an Elton John song. It makes no sense, but you feel me. You feel me? And of course, that sounds like a terrible rap lyric, but the next line I wrote was, in my life, the furniture is eating me. I am eating myself. And that became Interior Woman Night, which I'm really proud of. You must unhinge your mind to write something unhinged. I know that now. It's exciting to have acquired this ability to travel inside myself and see all that is there. Not even just my brain, but what it must look like in there, sound like, feel like. It's so exciting to try and tell another person. Casey.
Dear Casey, I think Interior Woman Night was a huge jump, and while I think your voice has certainly remained intact and consistent, the placement of it and your exploration in it is going in a new direction. I'm very envious of you, actually, because I'm still struggling in my poetry at the moment to branch off in another direction, or at least to deviate in some way from where I am right now. I'm often told to write something that makes me uncomfortable, but what I'm finding more and more is that I have no idea what uncomfortable thing it is that I should be writing about. I don't know where or from what angle to start. I feel as though I've lost touch with what drives me to write. This is not to say I've lost any interest in it or love for it, but just that I'm never sure how to begin anymore. The fiction story I'm writing, about the lizard man, came to me in a midday fever dream of sorts. I was collapsed in my room, sort of listening to sound through the window, and I remembered a poem that I began writing about a year ago. I think it's fair to say that Gabriel Garcia Lorca's Lizard poem inspired me as well in some way, though that thought has not occurred to me till now. I sat at my computer and wrote for an hour, half plugging at this idea in my head that I had of him, his blue-green body and his eyes too huge for a human face. I'm not usually in this fever dream state when I write, and I believe it's very possible and necessary to be able to write without it. But I'm wanting now for some way to recapture that sensation of purpose I had when writing it. Or maybe purposelessness is what I should write about. That would make the most sense. Sincerely, Katie.
Katie, I think purposelessness is exactly what you should be writing about. So often do we sit down to an empty Word document and stop ourselves from being truthful in our work because we feel like it has to be pretty or poetic or even make sense. It's been so ingrained in us to show, don't tell, that we become caught up in the showing and not what we're showing. I do think The Lizard Man is a step for you because there's this aspect of fantasy and fabulism that you've tried in other pieces but never fully committed to. I say take it to the next level, to a place where it couldn't possibly make sense in the world. Go to an extreme that, here it comes, makes you uncomfortable. On sort of the same note, I'm afraid that Interior Woman Night is a one-time thing. I'm afraid that I'll never be able to feel this way when writing again, write something that's this different for me again. Is this what I want to be doing? Is this cray imagery my niche? Or after this poem, will I return to the pretty little God lyric forever? Lastly, completely irrelevant, if a man doesn't sneak his way into a poem, do you not actually like him? We had an independent study at our first semester, was it? First semester? First, yeah. In which we started an epistolary relationship with each other. Because a lot of writers wrote to each other, just wrote letters to each other. They weren't necessarily poetic or poems, but they would just be in contact with each other constantly and write letters. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to write letters to each other that engaged our theoretical definitions, I guess you could say, and what we thought of the poets and theorists that we were reading. So yeah, that was that. So I guess I'll start with my freshman year, which, I mean, they're not bad poems, but, I mean, when you're 14, like, how good of a poem can you really write, honestly?